Hi, my name is Alejandro Erickson, and I want to talk to you about the Canon PowerShot SX50 HS from a birder's and a naturalist's point of view. This is a camera that is packed full of features that are really good for birders and naturalists, and a camera that is typical for people to be moving up from point and shoot to what is called a bridge camera, and also maybe a really good camera for somebody who wants to downgrade, or somebody who is used to SLRs but wants a cheaper, more compact, easier to carry option. So what I'm going to do right now is just tell you how I get good bird pictures and good macro shots on this camera. Two things that this camera is wonderful for. The first thing that you want is you want to keep the camera out of the way of your binocular. If you're using this for birding, you don't want this here while your binoculars hang down here. So what I got is a little pouch like this, which just barely fits the camera, just barely, just like that. And the pouch has a belt clip, so I just put this around my waist. And the camera is, if my waist is up here, the camera is just sitting there, basically holstered, ready for me to take out and take a picture, especially when there's a bird, of course, that I don't know what it is and I want to take a look at it later. The best camera you have is the camera you have with you. There are two things that I want this camera for. One of them is for taking pictures of birds at a distance, and the other one is for taking macro shots. And conveniently, there are exactly two custom settings on here. We have two custom settings here. These are really important. Watch what happens. If I have this on auto and I turn my camera on, okay, just takes a moment, and that's it. It's ready to go. But it's not zoomed in. So if I want to take a picture of a bird, I have to zoom all the way in, and I have to make sure my other settings are good. That's not what I want. I'm just going to turn this off. What I've done here is so the camera's off, and I've set C1 to be my birding setting. I press on, and the lens automatically comes out. Plus, here I have all of the other settings that I would want for birding. Now I'm going to review those for you right now. To set C1, suppose these are the settings that I want. So I just go into Menu, go right to the bottom of Menu, which I could have done by pressing up, and press Save Settings. And I would press Save to, right, let's get this here. Okay, so I would press Save to destination C1. Okay, that was in the menu. Now I don't want to do that because these are ridiculous settings, so I'm going to get out of that. So once again, I'll just bring that back to C1, and okay, so important, C1 is set to TV. Okay, so when I set C1, I had it on TV, and that means that that the priority here is the shutter speed. That means that when I'm in C1, this dial on the right controls the shutter speed. As you know, this is really important when you're shooting birds, because if you have one that's moving around too much, you want to be able to make sure that you stop the bird. 1/100th is generally the absolute minimum for shooting at this range, but it is possible with image stabilization. So don't be too skeptical of that. What'll happen is that 1 out of every 3 shots will work correctly. That brings me to my next point, is that I have this on continuous shooting, meaning that when the shutter is pressed, it just keeps taking pictures over and over and over. It's not super fast, but it's fairly fast. That brings me to another point. I shoot in JPEG because the raw images are so large that it takes them longer to be written to the card. So this has faster burst shutter speed. And the other thing is that I don't have this on autofocus burst. It focuses first, and then it just takes a bunch of shots at that focal length. The light metering that I use is spot, and it should actually be spot with the flexi zone. So what I do is I leave the flexi zone in the middle, and I can just show you here. So when I actually I'll have to zoom out for this. But when I hold this down, the middle there goes green. That's where it's focusing and light metering. So what I would do is I would point that straight at my bird. There's one there. I hold that down. It light meters there and focuses. And then I can move the frame around to frame the bird. Let's say I want to shoot it like that. It's still focused and light metered there. That's where I started. Okay? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about EV. So when you're shooting a bird with a bright background and a dark bird, you've probably encountered this problem before. Your bird can be really dark. And so what I want to do is use this plus minus button, press it, and I get this right here, and I just use this dial. Yeah, so I can use the dial and get any of these. If I have a bird that is on a completely bright sky, especially a white sort of washed out sky, I want a +2. If I have a bird that's on the water, I will often, oops, how do I get out of this? I will often want a +1. And if I have a bird that's in the bushes where the background is just the same brightness as the bird, I typically want 0. Now, you need to choose what your default settings are for C1, but be aware that the two things that you will often change are the shutter speed. If you have a bright day, put it on C1 and immediately just turn it up to 5, 6, or even 1,000. Okay? And if you're finding that you're shooting birds against a bright background, you should immediately bring that up to there. Those are the two settings that you need to be the most aware of when using C1. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about ISO. So I pressed ISO right here, and now it's telling me to press menu for settings. Press menu. But here it says max ISO speed 800. Okay, so I'm just telling it right now, don't go any higher than 800. And remember, that's the setting I have for C1. I could have a different setting for C2. I think that's the main thing. Let's just look through here. So I've got auto white balance, no color changing, no bracketing, no flash power. 4.3, that just means it uses the whole sensor. Oh, let me talk a little bit about 12 megapixels. Don't just buy the camera with the most megapixels. The sensor in this camera is tiny, 12 million pixels. If you try to pack more in, you'll get more noise and worse low light performance. Okay, so 12 megapixels is for a bridge or a point and shoot camera is probably about as much as you would want. Okay, so I think those are all of the, oh yeah, the most important birding feature that I use. I'm going to zoom all the way in. Now, you're trying to find a bird. You are trying to find a bird and you can't find it anywhere. And there's a little button that'll bring you out like this. There's your bird, and it'll let you back in. Okay, and I'm going to show you where that button is now. This is called the frame assist button. What it does, I just press it and it automatically zooms out, and I let it go, it zooms in. Okay. One thing to note is if this is pressed and I press the shutter halfway and I let this go, it won't go back. Okay, so I have to make sure that I'm not pressing the shutter halfway when I'm doing that. So yeah, again, everything's blurry here because this subject is too close for the zoom. But if I press this frame assist button, it'll automatically let me find my bird. Not that this is always easy, but sometimes it does make it easier. And then I can let it go and it'll bring me back into that subject. My C2 setting is a macro setting. And what that means is it's zoomed out partway to a setting to a distance that I want. And it's on manual focus with focus bracketing. That is the most wonderful feature for macro photography. The hardest part about macro photos is to get things in focus. And focus bracketing basically, what focus bracketing does is it focuses at 3 different distances. and just takes 3 consecutive shots at all those distances. Great for macro shots of flowers and things like that. Look at my zoom there. See that first number? It says 10, 5, 3, and all the way out to 0. In fact, one of the features that people like about this camera is that you can bring the lens all the way up to the subject. Now, personally, I don't think that's much of a feature for 2 reasons. One, when you take shots of a subject like this really close up, it distorts the subject. If you are a little bit further away, it flattens your subject and makes it look more like the way it looks to your eyes. Okay, so that's one important thing to consider. And the other one is, look what happens to my subject when I bring this up. If I'm using natural light or even a flash, I'm just shading my subject, and I don't want that. So what I want to do is look at that zoom number. I want it to be the first moment that it goes to 10 centimeters. Okay, 10 centimeters is my favorite distance. And I put it on macro focus, manual focus, and I bring this all the way down until it's at 10 centimeters. So this means that my shot will be in focus when it's exactly 10 centimeters away, and it will be as zoomed in as possible. Right, so let me show you how to get that focus bracketing feature. Once again, once I have my favorite macro setup, which is good for most macro shots, I'm gonna save those settings to C2. That's really important here. Birding C1, watch the zoom go up by itself. Macro C2, watch the zoom come back by itself. Okay. Now, if I go to function settings, let's bring this so you can see here. See, this one here is focus bracketing. It says in manual focus takes 3 shots at different focal length, different focal distances. And here it's this settings part here tells me how much to bracket. So this is like 1 focal stop, whatever it thinks that is. And I could do 2 or 3. So it'll take 1 picture here, 1 picture in the middle, and 1 picture. I just want to remind everybody, macro shots that are taken really close are crappy, and people take shots like this all the time. You want to be as far back as you can and still have this zoom so that it's nicely zoomed in. So just where it says 10 before it says 30. That's where I want to be, right there. So I can be 10 centimeters away and still get the shot. Okay, so those are the features that I wanted to talk about with this. Yeah, all around this is a great camera for anybody who's moving up from point and shoots or moving down from and more expensive SLRs. It's got all of the manual features that you would want, or that most people would reasonably want for just amateur hobby photography, and it's got enough automatic things that it lets it's quite forgiving to beginners as well. One feature that I forgot to talk about is the fast access settings button, which you can set to be any feature settings that you want. I set mine to be switching between RAW and JPEG photos,